Hello, my name is Dwight Hutchison, and I'm the author of several books and articles about the Star of Bethlehem. This is the 7th video in a series about the star, and today we're going to be looking at 5 specific royal signs that the wise men, the Magi, would have seen. And they would have been completely conscious that these were royal signs, and they would have asked themselves questions about them. Who is this referring to? Etc., etc. The signs that I'm going to speak to you about today are not usually the ones that you might hear about or read about or watch videos about on YouTube concerning the Star of Bethlehem. But these signs are specifically at the very heart of Babylonian astronomy. And I was really quite surprised to discover these things. I didn't even think that it was possible that such a series of signs would exist. So we'll be looking at events starting in the summer of 3 BC. It is possible that there were other previous manifestations of the star, but I will not cover that in this video today. Today we'll be centering on manifestations of the star linked with the synodic cycle of Jupiter. It's basically its yearly cycle. It's cycled through 13 months, and there are 5 phases of this, as we explored in a previous video, and with each of these phases there is a symbolic royal sign taking place in the years 3 and 2 BC. I just want you to listen to some passages from Psalm 89, which speaks about the sun and the moon, and also God's covenant with David. You can read here in Psalm 89, verse 3, "I have made a covenant with my chosen. I have sworn to my servant David, your seed I will establish forever, and build up your throne to all generations." And if you go on through the text, there are several things that speak of this covenant that God has made with David. If you go down to verses 19, 20, a little bit further along, and it says, "But my faithfulness and my mercy," in verse 24, "shall be with him, and in my name his horn will be exalted." He'll have more power. "And also I will set his hand over the sea, and his right hand over the rivers. And he shall cry to me, 'You are my Father, my God, and the rock of my salvation.' Also I will make him my firstborn, the highest of the kings of the earth. My mercy I will keep for him forever, and my covenant shall stand firm with him. His seed also I will make to endure forever, and his throne as the days of heaven." And then it goes on a little bit further. If you go down to verse 34, "My covenant I will not break, nor alter the word that has gone out of my lips. Once I have sworn by my holiness, I will not lie to David. His seed shall endure forever, and his throne as the sun before me. It shall be established forever like the moon, even like the faithful witness in the sky." And I saw this many years ago, after having seen that the moon was involved in several things that could have been significant events in the heavens associated with the star. And when I saw this passage, I said, "Oh, that is why the moon is here in this situation." because it is a witness that the throne of the Messiah, David's descendant, will be established forever. Now, I do just want to mention one other thing which is highly symbolically important as we think about the Babylonians, the Babylonian Magi, the Babylonian astronomers that came to Bethlehem. In the pockets of these men, or in their money purse, they would have had coins that had on them the faces of two men, the Parthian Emperor Phraates, who was emperor of the Parthian Empire for about 30 years before Jesus was born. They would have also had the coins of his son, who was king when Jesus was born. And on both of these coins that the men would have had in their pockets, almost for a certainty, have on them the moon with the king star Regulus. And so there's this positive association between the moon and the king star Regulus. This is something which I find just fascinating, because it's like that the wise men are being prepared all of their lives for the things that they're going to witness. There's also a monument that was made by one of the royal houses in the area there in southern Turkey, a royal house, the royal house of Commagene, that was related to all of the other royal houses in the area. And so it's interesting to see this monument, because it has the lion constellation represented in a stone format with the crescent moon and the king star Regulus. And so here we are, we have this highly developed symbolism, which is a very positive thing in the minds of the people at that time concerning the moon and the king star Regulus. And we'll see that is repeated time after time after time. Again, this star becomes a star in a context with other objects in the heavens. The king star Regulus, the sun and the moon, and other objects as well. The star, the planet, MUL.BABBAR, Jupiter, rises in the east at the end of July of 3 BC. But it does so in unique circumstances. Of course, every year or every 13 months, there is the rising of Jupiter in the east. But here, in this particular circumstance, Jupiter was rising at the same moment that the sun was in conjunction with the king star Regulus. Now, this does not happen all the time. In fact, this is very rare. But in this particular situation, the planet is coming up in the east exactly when the king star Regulus is in conjunction with the sun. And I've already mentioned to you that the sun has a very positive role in Babylonian thought, that it is associated also with justice and righteousness. And for it to be associated directly with the king star Regulus, as Jupiter is rising, as MUL.BABBAR is coming up out of the solar glare, is something that's absolutely remarkable. So this is a unique thing, and this is the absolute optimum date when this could have happened. At the end of November in 3 BC, when viewed from Iran, Babylonia, and Judea, the moon passed in front of Lugal, that is Regulus, during the night, the king star. And because of the lunar brightness, it may have been necessary for the observers of that event to place their finger over the moon or some other object in front of the moon, so that they could actually see the star as it went behind the moon and as it came out on the other side. Symbolically, this occultation, that is the passing of the moon in front of Lugal, certainly highlighted kingship. A king star with the moon passing in front of it. And for messianically oriented groups, the specific association of the moon with the Davidic kingship in Psalm 89 could have made this association even stronger. As it is written, David's descendants shall endure forever, and his throne as the sun before me. David's throne shall be established forever like the moon, and the witness in the sky is faithful. At the time of this occultation, MUL.BABBAR, that is Jupiter, had moved as far as it would go, among the background stars, that is. And this was precisely the night of MUL.BABBAR's first stationary point, called Phi in astronomical terms. Already for about 1 week, the planet would have appeared to have stopped, and 1 week later, some movement could have again be seen. From an earthly vantage point, the outer planets appear to stop visually a couple of times during their cycle. And being one of the key moments of the planetary cycle, these events were always calculated in advance and also recorded by the astronomers in Mesopotamia. The Magi were not surprised to see the planets, that is, wandering stars, stopping from time to time as they moved among the background stars. It was symbolically significant that Jupiter, that is MUL.BABBAR, the king planet, was in the Lion constellation exactly at this first stationary point during this occultation of the king star. And it would have been exceedingly rare for this type of thing to have taken place. One rough calculation shows that this could occur only perhaps every 2,750 years if all the circumstances were aligned correctly. The third celestial sign about kingship linked to Jupiter's cycle happened in January of 2 BC, and it is almost an exact replay of the event that happened at the end of November. Here again you have the moon that passes in front of Regulus, but this time it is when that Jupiter arises in the east for the last time as the sun goes down. Yeah. So as the sun was setting on the 20th of January in 2 BC, Jupiter was getting ready to rise, and it comes up at about the same time that the moon is getting ready to cross in front of Regulus, the king star Regulus, lugal in the Babylonian term. And it's almost a specific replay of what happened in November with the second major kingship sign. And I think that this is quite interesting in respect to another thing that we find in the Bible. If you remember concerning dreams and the interpretation of dreams, as is pointed out by Joseph there in Egypt, he said that if something is repeated twice, that it shows that it is something that has been determined by God, and it will certainly come to pass. Well, we're going to see that there are other events, similar events, that are repeated twice as we continue to go through this series. So again, here you have the king planet, Jupiter, MUL.BABBAR, Sedeq in Hebrew, the planet of righteousness that is coming up in the east. It's one of its part of its regular cycle. It's coming up in the east for the last time in the evening as the sun goes down. And then at the same moment, you have the king star, Lugal, Regulus, that is eclipsed by the moon. And of course, we've just seen through Psalm 89 that the moon is a witness that the throne of the Messiah will endure forever. So these two incidents happening at the same time both highlight kingship. And at some point, the Magi are going to start asking themselves questions about these things and saying, who is this speaking about? So these events are rare, and I did a kind of another rough calculation of these things. It might be something that would reproduce once every 2,750 years again. Now, in the fourth kingship sign involving Jupiter's cycle, there was something completely different. And this time, what you have is Jupiter and Regulus in the west, getting ready to set in the west. And about the time that they are doing that, you have the moon that comes up in the east. Of course, this is during the night, and Magi would be out watching this type of thing. And there are in Babylonian documents, astronomical documents, many places where it speaks about how it speaks of the planets and the moon, the sun as gods, okay? And sometimes it talks about how that the gods were facing each other from across the sky at 180 degrees difference. And so this is very similar type thing. And this is the moment of Jupiter's second stationary point. Yeah, at this particular moment, the planet is stopping as it moves among the background stars during its regular cycle. And it goes through a first stopping point, first stationary point, and then a second one. And this is the second one, which is 2 months after the rising of Jupiter in the evening, in the east, that we spoke about in the third sign. And so here again, you have the king planet and the king star facing from the west to the east. You have them facing the moon. And, this just can't happen all the time. It doesn't. It is something, again, that is rare, that would take place occasionally, but very occasionally. So again, here you have the lunar witness that the throne of the Messiah, the righteous one, will endure forever. Now, the fifth major sign involving Jupiter's cycle happens when the planet goes down in the west and it disappears into the solar glare. And this happens about every 13 months. But this time, just like when Jupiter appeared in the summer of 3 BC, remember Jupiter came up at the moment when the sun was in conjunction with the king star Regulus Lugal. And here it is the same thing, but in reverse. This time the planet is disappearing into the solar glare at the same moment when the sun is in conjunction with the king star Lugal Regulus. And so here you have the sun, which is associated with righteousness, coming in contact with the king star, and we have the ideas of a righteous king there again, and you have the major king star, the planet Jupiter, MUL.BABBAR, Sedeq in Hebrew, the righteous planet. You have that going down in the west at the same time that the sun is in conjunction with the king star. So again, there's this interaction of the king star with the king planet and with the sun and the moon. And just as it says in Psalm 89, the throne of the Messiah will be established forever. It's a promise. And note here again, this is basically the same thing as the cycle started out with. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, two things repeating themselves show that something is proclaimed by God, established by God, and that it will come to pass. It's determined by God. And so it is in this context that the Magi, using their technical astronomy, because it's a technical astronomy that tells them where the sun is in relation to Regulus, it's their technical astronomy that tells them when the planet would be at its stationary points. It's their technical astronomy that tells them when the planet Jupiter will come up in the east as the sun has just set. And all of these things are symbolic things in the context that have to do with their technical astronomy. It's not their astrology. It's not their astrological system that is giving the symbols. There are royal signs, royal events, if one likes, that are linked with the technical aspects of the Babylonian astronomy. Now, in the next video, we're going to be looking at some other events that also took place during the same year, and they are also events that testify concerning the arrival of a great king. Something is happening concerning a king, and we'll get into that in the next video. Please do like and subscribe. We would really like to get this message out to other people.